We're back at the table with our special panel of local journalists who are helping us count down the top stories of 2017. Now, number one on our list of scandals is the UNM Athletics Department. So many different angles on this one that we likely can't get to every detail, but let's start with the bigger picture, Matt. A special audit by the State Auditor's Office showed that that department wasn't following very certain rules for financial controls that other UNM departments are required to follow. And the layer cake of that is there's two independent entities that seem to, they work with their own, the Lobo Club, and there's boosters. There's all kinds of money flowing in lots of different ways. Working this backwards, where are we now on this? Do we have a sense that the department is 50% or more there to fixing itself, or is this so big that it's going to take a while to really get this solved?
I'm in the latter camp.
Gotcha.
I don't know that we're 5%. I mean, we've identified some of the issues, but this is part of, and I'm a fan of intercollegiate sports and athletics at the college level. I think it's a valuable experience for people, much the same way that a nationally ranked debate team or something like that would be. But I think that they've started to identify some of the issues. The trip to Scotland that we saw highlighted on Channel 13 and a lot of the work that Daniel Libet's done at New Mexico Fishbowl. I think that there's a real issue when you have the mixing of private money and public money, and especially in a department that doesn't get a whole lot of scrutiny. And I think when you look at that with a critical eye, you have to ask some real good questions. I think there are good people there, and this is a solvable problem, but I don't think they're close to solving it.
Is it your sense there were some people in this community laying in the weeds for this, basically meaning they have been so upset about this situation for a while, those that knew about this? And when it broke, it was just game on. People were ready to jump all over it.
And I get that just from reading the tea leaves. You've got a guy who grew up here, who lives in Chicago, who starts a blog, and all of a sudden just blows the entire thing wide open.
That's right.
There are people who are really upset with the way that this was being managed.
Right.
And it's a ton of money. I mean, you've got coaches who are making $300,000 a year. You've got the athletic director. I looked over his contract at one point. He had 2 car allowances. And they were paying gas and insurance for him for a guy who makes $300,000 a year.
No idea. No kidding.
And, was the athletic department that successful?
Very fair point there. The Scotland trip was mentioned. For the public, that was the one. That really, you're talking about $65,000. It got paid down and all that kind of a thing, but the atmospherics were pretty horrible, weren't they? It just didn't work.
No, you can't take what seems to be a private trip funded with dollars meant for other things. I mean, they haven't gotten some of the boosters to pay back the luxury suites. There's just a lot of accounting problems that need to be taken care of.
Interesting when you think about where we are now, what we just discussed with Matt. I don't know what you're sensing, but a lot of folks out there, they're really out for UNM sports right now. They really feel like something's gone wildly out of balance. And they're not going to be satisfied with a little nibbling at the edges here to fix this. They want a wholesale deal, and that includes that relationship with the Lobo Club. They really want to see some hardcore changes there. What's your sense of it as you read that?
Yeah, I think some of this is just, it struck me, I haven't reported on it directly, but kind of a lack of institutional control a little bit, that they've almost allowed the athletics department to kind of function as this rogue agency in a bit, and not to have recurring deficits every year, and not to have to balance their budgets, things that other agencies could never get away with. And I think maybe some of that was easier when the Lobos were going to the NCAA tournament, almost going to the Sweet 16.
Right.
There may be some willing to look the other way when that's happening. I do think, the Lobos are the closest thing we have in New Mexico to an NBA team. I mean, there is that kind of rabid following, but that kind of cuts both ways. As we've seen on this, there's that support, but there's also right now a real demand for accountability.
Well, your colleague Jeff Grammer, there's others folks, doing good
Jeff's
work.
Jeff's done a lot
there.
of good work.
Absolutely, but there's pushback on these people to kind of back off a little bit.
Right, and I think what he's run into is even on, requests filed under the Public Records Act and not fulfilling these or deleting emails, things like that are. We're going to see that play out, I think, over the coming months.
That's right. We have a new athletic director. The old one, Paul Krebs, retired or resigned, whatever you want to look at it. But the trail he's left behind has been pretty significant. When you think about the idea that he's been requesting or was requesting emails be deleted, there was lots of opportunity when you read the tea leaves, or you read the trail, that certain things could have been fixed at a certain time. It just got let go. And you got to think there's a greater university at play here. You can't have an independent, with this kind of money, people will be within their rights to demand a little more control, institutional control, as Daniel mentioned. I mean, is that your sense as well? Folks have just sort of had it and they want something different here.
Yeah, and there has to be some question among some that, you know, who lost sight of the fact of this being a public institution.
Right.
And not not operating like a corporation, and that there is this accountability, and he's a public employee.
That's right.
Even if there is a mix of public and private money moving through.
That's right.
So I think obviously this made such a huge wave in the state, and I have to say, as a result of good journalism, it's another reason I like the story.
Right.
So with the incoming, as you mentioned, there's gonna be some changes. But,
Right.
but yeah, there's also going to be some leftovers too.
And that's an interesting opportunity with Mr. Nunez, the new AD, and a new UNM president. They could work. There's no loggerheads here. There's nobody defending the old way. Do you know what I mean? So it seemed like this is the opportunity to make some serious changes here.
I think there is the
Yeah.
opportunity, and I think it remains to be seen if it's defending the old way. I think
Right.
the athletics department is a very strong entity, and I think there really needs to be some soul searching over there. And I think, as I said, that there are good people there, people who saw this start to get reported and talked to the Jeff Grammers or talked to the Daniel Libbets and really said, like, hey, we want this to work. And they've had great success. I mean, there's a women's national cross country team,
Yep.
the women's basketball team right now.
The men's soccer team, NCAA champions.
And
that's
there's
right.
value to that. I think there's actual real monetary value to that.
Yeah.
But like Dan said, you can't let this department constantly run a deficit when nobody else on campus can,
Right.
and your associate professors are making $65,000 a year.
That's right. That's right. Our AG Hector Balderas is in this now, and what we're all talking about here is basically transparency.
Right.
When you really get down to the nut of it, and that's what he's asking for here, basically. And it's been interesting to watch this go along, where he's not accepting of pretty much things as they go along. He's always wanting a little bit more from the university, even though they're saying they're complying. Strong hand here he's holding, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes, especially because it looks like they haven't been complying. And I think one of the questions as the investigation goes on, both from a journalistic and an official standpoint, is you have to look back and say who allowed this to happen and how did it get so out of control. And ultimately, the regents are in charge of the university. And all of the things that are happening happen because a president isn't watching hard enough and the regents aren't calling them
That's right.
home to say, why aren't you taking care of this?
That's right. That's right. I want to swing back. We were joking a little bit earlier, Dan Boyd, when we started talking about this. But somehow the ski team, the women's ski team, ended up as a sacrificial sport there. And you would think in a different circumstance, some folks might be okay with that, but a lot of folks were very much not okay with that. That, this is not the target to fix the football or the basketball program's deficits. It shouldn't come on the backs of other sports where people are earning good GPAs, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and eventually I think they did at least save the ski team for a year based on some
Right.
private donations.
Right.
But I think some of this goes back to the conversation we were having about higher ed overall. I mean, that folks feel like they've had to cut faculty positions, they've had to cut, other, higher ed things on the higher ed campuses, and that why should sports kind of be exempt for this? But then how do you do that? I mean,
That's right.
basketball and football are the glamour,
That's right.
sports. I mean, should they have to take something out of their hide as well? So.
That's right. That's right. I want to touch on something, Mary, that Matt mentioned. It is good for a university, and with a winning program, it draws people here. It changes the image of a university. The two basketball games I went to this past season, it was kind of shocking how few people were there. And these kind of deficits, or when you look at a place like the Pit, it's not exactly $100 a night. We're talking big dough that gets spent to put on a basketball game. And the idea of the suites not being paid for, to come back for that for a quick second, that was another one that really opened up the public to a lot of this. Your sense of this, some have paid, some are making arrangements to pay, but that's a big one right there. You think we can get our arms around immediately and just say, okay, here's a line in the sand. You get this if you pay, you don't get this if you don't pay. If it was that simple.
Yeah, I think going off of that, one of the things, I don't cover high school or college sports or sports at all.
Yeah.
But the idea that they could give so much to a donor, or have this kind of like catering to a donor and going to Scotland and
That's right.
Final Four and the
right.
suites. But I used the word, donor's not the right word, because some were not. It was like the at least the reasoning was the idea that they would be.
Right.
And so it seemed like there's this spending for the future and spending for something that might may or
right.
may not come, which I would imagine alarmed the public as well.
That's right. That's right. But Inez, there's that transparency thing again. If you got donors anonymously covering the nut on things just to get it over with, that doesn't solve anything for anybody at the end of the day. You need much more than that. Not to say these people are doing something wrong, but the public should have a right to know who's paying for certain things in a public institution. It would seem.
Yeah, totally, because it's our money at the bottom line. Even if donors are supplementing it, it's taxpayer dollars. And at some point, we have to say, is it more important to have a basketball team or a football team, or to pay professors enough so that you get great professors and great students?
That's right. That's right. Matt, this brings us all right back around to something we talked about just a little bit ago in one of our top 10, and that is funding for higher education. Is this an opportunity to look at this for a scrub? Just look at this completely brand new and just kind of wipe out some things, because some serious changes are going to have to be made, as was pointed out by everybody here a little bit ago. How does sports fit into that situation for UNM?
I think it's a necessary part of the college experience and what the public gets out of it. It's the way a lot of the public interacts with the university, is to go to a football game or a cross-country meet or something like that. But there is such a strong demand for transparency and accountability.
That's right.
When you learn that the physical plant, I think it was, is paying the bills for the basketball team to use the pit, and you've got a bunch of people sitting in luxury boxes for free. I mean, there does need to be some outreach. This is sort of part of, quote unquote, the game. But we're not a rich state. There needs to be accountability.
Not to be too sports geeky about it, but there's been a lot of things out there, a lot of folks out there who feel like trying to be a Division I school is a futile chase. It just makes the money that much different. Now, you can make money by getting beat up on by good schools. They come in, they write you a big fat check. That's one way to look at it, but that doesn't do much for pride and everything else. So what's your sense of that one?
No, it doesn't. It's tough. I don't know if you can drop the football team.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's happened though. Other
it
places
has.
have done it.
Other places have done it.
Yeah.
We are a basketball school, and the amount of enthusiasm that there is in the community, like Dan said, this is the closest thing that we've got to a professional sports franchise.
That's right.
And when it's going, it's fun. You get caught up in it, and and it transferred into the women's basketball program, which is not traditionally a money maker, but you start to see that kind of enthusiasm. So it's important. I think it'll be part of the university and should be part of the university. But you got to think really hard about what it's costing you elsewhere.
That's right. And we previously mentioned Ms. Garnett Stokes is coming in. Dr. Stokes is going to have to make some decisions come next spring about these things. Someone's going to have to be disappointed here, it seems to me.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one right there.
Right, and I think having a new president, a new AD, I think it is part of it. It's not just New Mexico, it's a national conversation. I mean, this is an awkward intersection between business. I mean,
That's right.
the companies, NCAAs, making a lot of money off of, and then these are college kids who are here on scholarship with
right.
limitations on, so I do think that that's part of a national conversation that
right.
we need to reconcile. But I
right.
think there's certainly some institutional questions too.
No question there. Another one might be lottery scholarship when you think about it. That's sort of overriding a lot of things right now too. We've got to figure that out. Because again, I'm back on this theme of dropping student enrollment. There's economic issues when it comes to New Mexico students. I mean, what might be affordable for some, they look at it out of state going, oh my God, you're schooling so cheap here. It's still expensive if your family is trying to get along there. So what do you think of that? I mean, is there some connection there between these things?
I mean, I think we're moving into a really big picture now and thinking into the future of just retention, mentioned earlier, attracting a strong student body, people who are going to stay here and love it here and make money just that is, I think, one of the biggest questions moving forward for the state, and it goes all the way down to like the elementary school level, the decisions to invest in that or to watch the money for that sake of deciding what sort of future can you have. Now, there's always a shortfall here, so I think the tendency is to think in the immediate.
That's a good point there in that, what we don't have becomes sort of the primary driving thing for decisions. Thank you all so much. I have to end it right there. This has been another wonderful year-end group. Thank you so much. Really good stuff. Matt, good to see you again. Welcome back.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. Now, thank you all for joining us for the Top 10 Countdown of 2017 on New Mexico in Focus. We'll see you next year.